Okay. Value for whom? Construction projects are value delivery system. I'm sure you all agree on this. And a lot of what we're talking about here in this community, this conference, is, of course, how do we basically optimize this? What mechanisms are best and such? But to really be able to make the best possible machinery here and optimize it, we really need to understand our output. And this is where things start getting a bit more fuzzy. One thing is, what is value? That's something I've written and presented about on previous conferences, so I'm not going to kick that hornet's nest too much today. But then the other question is, whose value are we optimizing for? We say that we're delivering value for the customer, but everybody's a customer. Everybody who is impacted by the project is a customer. We can't optimize value for all of them, can we? So I'll just give a very short version of my definition of value so that you know what I'm referring to. I see value as the relationship between what you get and what you give. And value is something that's subjective or particular. There are many stakeholders in construction projects. This is just how we chose to group them, categorize them. There are other authors have presented other categorizations. This is just what we found to be useful. But the question is, are all of these equally important? And we haven't really found any good answers in literature. In the lean construction literature, there are different authors have presented different opinions, but there aren't really any consensus on this. And stakeholder theory tells us who might want to influence the project, their abilities to do so, and their interests, but does not really tell us whose value matter, beyond the need to appease those with power. So this is, seminal typology of stakeholders by Mitchell et al. And since there are three elements to describe stakeholders, one is power, their ability to impose on the project, legitimacy, the relationship with the project, do they have a legitimate one? Urgency, the degree to which stakeholder claims call for immediate attention. Now, in the context of value delivery, we have interpreted this one as meaning, is the stakeholder's value affected by the project? Will they receive positive or negative value from the project? So, in the stakeholder literature, would say, demanding stakeholders, those that have no power or legitimacy. For example, they can just be ignored until they gain either power or legitimacy. However, we don't think that really happens in projects. If someone is like a neighbor to a project and they have no power to influence the project and they have no legitimate claim to the project, they won't necessarily be ignored by the project. So we sort of decided to view it from the other point of view and look at whose value matters can be understood by considering motivations for delivering value. So look at why is value delivered. And we tried to create a taxonomy of motivational factors. And this research has been anchored in the pragmatic research paradigm, and it's based on abductive reasoning, based on a scoping study of relevant literature and data from 2 case studies. So this is the taxonomy that we came up with, and I'll explain each of the branches here. So first of all, we have the transactional motivation. So value is delivered through the formal transaction. Right? So we have a contract or several contracts, which is basically a formal exchange of get and give. You have a product or service that the seller gives to the buyer, gets, and we have some exchange value, money typically, that the seller gets from the buyer. So there's some component there. So value is delivered as, this part of this formal transaction. That's what we call core transactional. Value is delivered as a direct comment of contractual agreements. But then in many cases, there are third parties that has to be satisfied. Typically municipality or some other governmental agency. And we need to provide some value for them to be able to just erect our building. So that would be an enabling transactional motivation. Then the other main category is selfish motivation. So one is greed. Now, here it's illustrated by Robert, but okay, greed isn't necessarily bad, but it's sort of unilateral. You know, it's taking value for yourself. Now, if this is just a matter of, okay, I'm gonna improve my own processes so that I gain more value from the project, that's fine, but it could also end up being harmful for someone else's value. For instance, you're exploiting loopholes in the contract. Self-preservation. This is typically you will deliver value to some other party for the sake of, well, typically reducing liability in the future. So you're delivering higher quality than you are required to, either by contract or by laws and regulations or whatever, just to make sure that this doesn't come, delivering a so-so product doesn't come back to bite you in the ass in the future. And then there's relationship and reputation. Delivering value to create or maintain a good standing with others. So you'll give, the contractor might give the owner more, something that's not part of the contract, just to maintaining his good graces for the future, for the sake of future cooperation, etc. And then there is altruistic motivation. So value is delivered to others without any benefit for oneself, and perhaps beyond the warm and fuzzy feeling inside. So an example of this would be architects who, sort of part of their professional identity tends to be they see themselves as caretakers of the urban environment. So they might, go on above and beyond what's required of them just to provide something that's, will be more pleasant. And what we concluded from all this was basically that value for whom is a matter of value philosophy, because these motivations are not universal. They will be a matter of philosophy, either like personal, values, plural you might have, like we have to save the planet, or religious values for doing altruistic things or whatever, or it could be like business values. Are you looking for a short-term cash grab, or are you looking to maintain a relationship with a client in the long run? And what this also means then is that whose value matters is not absolute and constant across projects. And this is something that I sort of had the impression that no one has spelled it directly out, but from reading other authors, there's sort of an underlying assumption that it should be. We're arguing that it isn't. And of course, in practice, then diverging philosophies between project participants should be a matter of concern, because if people have a very different view of this. This could be a sort of conflict. So to sum up, having a clear notion of whose value matter is needed to optimize projects as value delivery systems. No consensus exists in the construction community. Stakeholder theory is of limited use. Whose value matters can be understood through the motivation of why value is delivered. But to what degree each of the identified factors motivates someone will be highly dependent on their philosophical outlook. Thus, value for whom is a question of value philosophy. There is no prescriptive solution. Okay, thank you.